never found his body. He survived. He lives on whatever he can catch. Eats them raw, alive, no longer human. Right now, he's out there, watching, waiting. Don't look. He'll see you. Don't move. He'll hear you. Don't breathe. You're dead.
What's up, everybody? I am your head counselor, the soapy titties of a future slasher victim.
Nice. I love soapy titties. I'm glad I get to spend a whole 2 hours with some nice soapy titties.
I was trying to get through it, and I was like, come on, just get through it. Get through it. That is my co-counselor, a very badly burnt camp caretaker who is out for revenge. And welcome to...
Soapy titties. Welcome to Soapy Titties, where we cover the soap and nipples of soapy titties.
Welcome to Camp Grindhouse, where today we have some fun activities planned, like archery, swimming, and murdering campers in the name of revenge. That's better than spying on girls in the shower.
Yes, I was about to say some peeping toms, peeping some soapy titties.
Yeah, because today we are covering another awesome 80s camp slasher, The Burning from 1981. Man, so we are back at Camp Grindhouse. It feels good. We need to put another log on the fire, but yeah, it's nice and cozy in here.
We'll just put this dead body on the fire. It'll burn nice and long.
So you want to tell the listeners why you picked The Burning? I know you were really excited to do this.
Well, The Burning is a fucking 80s camp slasher. That's the main thing behind it. But my man Tom Savini, this movie's known for having awesome fucking kills, awesome effects, and it's Tom Savini effects. And this was, anybody who knows about practical effects in horror, the fucking heyday of Tom Savini.
Yeah.
Like, if you were watching a movie, anything that comes out that has practical effects in it, there's a good chance that Tom Savini pioneered the way that they do at least some type of effect. And this was the time he was coming up with all those awesome ways to shoot that, or shoot certain scenes. And yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah, man, here's the thing about Tom Savini. If you ever watch any documentaries or behind the scenes with him, you will very quickly notice he didn't just come on to set and do, his practical effects. This motherfucker would come on to set and do other jobs too.
Bro, this motherfucker literally, like, I watched all the behind the scenes you can watch on this movie. He didn't just come in and do his scenes. He practically directed all of the murder scenes, to the point where the guy who played Cropsy never plays in any of the kill scenes. Tom Savini is doing the killing in all of the kill scenes because he knew how to do it right.
Yeah, man, like, I remember just seeing him talk about Friday the 13th, and he'd be like, oh, well, they needed an arm in this scene, so I did that, and they needed somebody to hold this light, and I did that, and then, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do about this, and then I came up with the whole scene of doing it, and I'm like, dude, are you like the fucking director, producer, special effects guy? Like, you do he's like, yeah, people were hungry, so I went and did catering. Like, he did so many fucking jobs. And one thing that I found out in my research here is he was like doing a bunch of shit on this movie. And he's like, some of the stuff I didn't even get to work on the special effects as much because I had to do other shit.
Well, he lied, because he did, like, literally all the special effects.
No, he did
behind the scenes. But I get what you're saying. So this was actually the Weinstein's first movie under Miramax. The very, very first one. And the director and Harvey Weinstein had some heat. The director wanted it to go one way, and they ended up actually kicking him out of the editing room towards the end of the movie. And they had to come up with this ending that they wanted, and pretty much had so much trust in Tom Savini by this point that they were looking at him like, "What are we gonna do?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "What do you want?" His quote was literally, "I don't want to leave this movie with less friends than I came in with. So you tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen."
Nice. Also, we just finally sent out the last batch of stickers. That was quite a job. You should have seen the post office when I walked in with the fucking bunch of envelopes. But yeah, if you haven't got yours yet, you should be receiving them soon. Unfortunately for you guys, I opted for the cheapest shipping considering there was a lot of them. But yeah, they're on their way. And if you are feeling generous, take a picture, stick in them somewhere and tag us in it because we would love to see where all these things end up. And I think I sent out like at least 10 per envelope I sent out, and then I also added like a bunch of just like horror stickers and a couple of those cool old school, the green horror stickers they used to stick on at the video store. They'd stick on all the horror movies. So yeah, everybody got a little something cool. But yeah, let us know when you get them and you stick them on shit.
Yep, stick 'em, stick 'em, stick 'em, stick 'em.
And the last thing is head on over to the Patreon for our weekly news. It's just us over there talking about the latest horror news that we think is interesting or funny. We are also dropping Scream 7 leaks and rumors over there, so if you're interested in that, come check that out. And we just got our stuff to start testing out the videos on the physical media and cool stuff like that we kind of talked about a few weeks ago. So keep an eye out for that stuff. A lot of stuff happening right now.
Good shit.
Yeah, all good. So with that being said, are you ready to jump into the burning?
I am burning to jump into some killing and soapy titties.
Yeah, Tom Savini made those soapy titties. They weren't real. They looked good though, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
Well, I actually seen. So no, I think there's some actual soapy titties in this.
Yeah, they're real.
Yeah, those are real titties. But he did make some titties. There's actually so in the special features of the Scream Factory version, which I suggest anybody who watches this movie, the Scream Factory restoration makes this movie 100 times better. But there is a still shot of him poking the nipple, and poking the fake nipple of the body he had to cast for the non-soapy but bloody titties. That was from another scene.
All right. That's good stuff. All right, let's do it.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at GrindhouseSyndicate.Horror.Pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say? The morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to spy on you in the shower, give us a review. Which, by the way, 2 people wrote us out some really nice reviews this past week.
Yeah, some good ones. Man.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was awesome. We get a lot of reviews where people click the stars, and that's always fantastic. We love that. But there are a special group of people that take the time out to write about how much they like the show and how I believe somebody referred to it as cozy, which I like that. I'm down for that. That's a I want you to have that cozy feeling that you're just sitting here with us talking about movies.
Well, yeah, that's something that we have talked about early on in the show. It hasn't been talked about as much recently, but a big part of why we love doing this show is for those out there, some people don't have a person in their life that's super into horror. So to be able to listen and kind of join in and feel like they're there with us, or be able to comment on things and ask us questions, whatever it is. We want you to feel like you're here with us,
Yep.
and to hearing those reviews, reading them, really is my favorite part of the most gratification we get from doing this.
Yeah, and when you write a review, we've had some people just write, 2, 3 words. Some people write a paragraph. Whatever you write, it doesn't matter because not only does it stay on what you wrote it, like, Apple or Spotify, but we also post it to our website. And there's literally a whole entire page on our website that's just everybody's reviews that they wrote out. So don't think that if you write it, it's just going to get buried in, Apple's reviews or whatever. It's literally going to be posted on the website itself.
Yeah. Yep. And also, if you're on YouTube, comment on this video because I'm sure YouTube is already upset about all the titties that we've talked about, and they're probably going to murder this unless we get some comments.
Yeah, they tried to suppress last week's episode, and I had to go on there and comment to jumpstart it. And
Snitching us out.
so what happened was I made a comment, and then they didn't like it because I believe I commented redneck torture zombies, and I guess they didn't like torture, so they removed it. So I had to go back and comment again. And then when I did that, it jump-started, and then other people started commenting, and it literally took off from there.
What was it, tortured, or did they consider redneck a derogatory term?
Could have been that too. I don't know. All right, so The Burning is a 1981 American teen slasher film directed by Tony Maylam and starring Brian Matthews, Leah Aries, Fisher Stevens, and Jason Alexander. Its plot follows a summer camp caretaker who is horribly burnt from a prank gone wrong, where he seeks vengeance at a nearby summer camp years later. The film marks the debuts of actors Jason Alexander, Fisher Stevens, and Holly Hunter. Based on the New York urban legend of the Cropsy Maniac, the screenplay was written by Bob Weinstein and Peter Lawrence from a story conceived by producer Harvey Weinstein, who fucking sucks. Tony, and I guess he wrote it with Tony Maylam and Brad Gray. I totally almost skipped them because of my hate for Harvey Weinstein. I think people will forgive it, though. It was produced by Miramax Films, had a budget of $1.5 million and a box office of $707,000. In 1980, Harvey Weinstein was desperate to break into the movie business, and with the success of low-budget horror films such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, he figured this was his chance. Having heard stories about the Cropsy legend when he was a young camper in upstate New York, Weinstein brought the idea to his producing partner, Michael Cole, who loved it. The project was initiated before the popularity of Sean S. Cunningham's sleeper hit Friday the 13th, with Harvey Weinstein creating a 5-page treatment in 1979 under the title The Cropsy Maniac and registering it in April of 1980, a full month before Cunningham's film was released. British director Tony Maylam, known for rock music documentaries in the 70s, was hired as the Burning's director in the summer of 1980. Maylam had met Weinstein and Berger while the producers worked as rock promoters. And speaking of Tony Maylam, according to him, he played Cropsy for about 90% of the movie. So we got some dispute here.
Well, wait, the guy who played Cropsy says he...
No, the director.
Oh, no. So I did see...
No, like, I was
He
there.
was full of shit. No, but I just watched the interview with the guy who played Cropsy and Tom Savini, and the guy who played Cropsy, so if you look at this guy's face now, you can tell he was the face of Cropsy. Like, seeing him without the makeup, I know that sounds weird because he's got so much prosthetic.
Oh.
You can tell. But yeah, he outright admitted that he was not Cropsy for any of the kill scenes. That was almost all Tom Savini. But outside of that, he played Cropsy. There's only so much.
Yeah.
And if you take away the kill scenes, there's only so much scenes that he's even in.
He played Cropsy's arm or leg. Because that's really most of what you see of him in this movie. It's like his legs or his arm. Like, you don't see him until the end.
Well, it's funny because the legs catching on fire was actually Tom Savini, and
Yeah.
the arm was not him either.
Yeah.
I seen a picture. I don't know who it was, but I seen a picture of the guy with the arm prosthetics on it.
So between this debate, I'm going to side with Savini because I like him more.
Yeah.
And
Well, he's neither one. He doesn't have a reason to lie.
yeah.
Like he's not. There's no debating because there's all behind the scene pictures and footage of Tom Savini being the one doing the killing. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that they mentioned too that, this was written before Friday the 13th. Tom Savini said this came right in between him doing Friday the 13th and Maniac. And he had mentioned that, I guess, Harvey or Bob Weinstein, one of the two, when they were trying to bring him in to do the effects, they're like, hey, you know that we had this before Friday the 13th, right? Like, that was a selling point to them. Like, we're not ripping off on this movie you did really good on. We had our story prior.
Yeah, even though it has very similar kills.
Yeah.
So as the film takes place mostly outside and is set in summer, the production had a small window of opportunity in which to make the film, or it risked having to wait until the following year. Knowing that the slasher craze would not last forever and wanting to get their film released before it fizzled out, the producers rushed it into production. The film originally had a different ending, with the showdown taking place in a boathouse. Another big change is that Todd ends up as the final boy rather than as the heroic adult, and Alfred is killed by Cropsy. Other changes include a character named Alan, who is to be the love interest for Tiger. I don't know why that wouldn't have anything to do with that. I'm glad they took him out. That's dumb. This version also ends with a campfire scene, but the last line is different from the one we see here.
So in the original script, it was supposed to end in a boathouse?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So
the very first version.
So I got some info on later on.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's a big change.
So The Burning was shot in the late summer of 1980 around Buffalo and northern New York, with much of the film taking place in and around existing summer camps to give it an authentic look while keeping costs down. The cast also wore their own clothes throughout the production, with many of the cast members local to the New York area and were aware of the Cropsy legend. As many people are aware, Tom Savini turned down his chance to work on Friday the 13th Part 2 in order to work on this film. Although he was very hands-on with the production, he claims that he did not have much time to put together some of the special effects. In Grande Illusions, his first book on his life as a special effects guru, Savini says he based the look of Cropsy on a burnt beggar he had seen as a kid in Pittsburgh, as well as textbooks on burn victims. Due to time constraints, the resulting mask was more of a melt than a burn. Maylam has said that there was talk of a sequel at the time The Burning was wrapping. However, he was leery of being typecast as a horror director, and the disappointing box office performance of the original stalled the sequel's production. The Burning was released on DVD in North America for the first time ever on September 11th of 2007 by MGM Home Entertainment. The DVD contains several extras, including a commentary by director Tony Maylam, a featurette covering Savini's makeup effects, a stills gallery, and the theatrical trailer. Despite the DVD cover displaying the R rating, the print that is used is the full uncut version. Shout Factory released The Burning on Blu-ray disc and DVD combo on May 21st of 2013 under their sublabel Scream Factory. In May 2023, Scream Factory announced an Ultra HD Blu-ray release that came out on July 11, 2023. In 2009, writer-director Joshua Zeman and director Barbara, can't say her last name, released a documentary titled Cropsy, which detailed the Cropsy maniac urban legend on which The Burning is based. Despite sharing little connection to The Burning, the film reignited the popular mythos of the character. If you've never seen the documentary, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, it used to be. Basically, I'll give you a gist of it. So when Ronald Reagan became president, he cut a ton of funding for like mental institutions, and they were forced to release a lot of mental patients back into society. And one of these mental patients was a pedophile, and he was living in the woods, and apparently he had abducted some kids. And this is really what a lot of what the Cropsy documentary focuses on, is kind of the real Cropsy. There isn't a real Cropsy. Like, this is not a real person in this movie, and really
This is just
not.
kind of based off of the urban legend
Yeah.
version of Cropsy that started getting told around campfires.
Now, I haven't seen the documentary in years, so I could have gotten some things wrong. So, those of you who are big Cropsy documentary fans, don't come at me in the comments or emails. We get a lot of emails when stuff like that happens. But, yeah, that's kind of a gist of the documentary. If you're interested in it, you can find it. It's a pretty decent documentary.
Yeah, it's really cool that so a lot of the actors that came on relatively unknown. It was a lot of their first or very early in their career, but most of them were from upstate New York where they shot this, and they were aware of the Cropsy legend. They'd grown up camping and hearing about this legend. So that's really cool little detail.
Yeah, one thing about the documentary that I did like is they talk a lot about the burning, because the burning really kicked up the whole Cropsy thing again, and it's really a major point in the documentary talking about this movie.
Yeah, if I remember right, the original guy that the legend was based off of was a long time before this movie. So I could see that the legend kind of fizzling down some, and this movie kind of brought it back.
So in 2017, Complex Magazine named The Burning the 12th best slasher film of all time. The following year, Paste included it in their list of the 50 best slasher movies of all time, while Cropsy was ranked the 12th greatest slasher villain of all time by LA Weekly. I'm going to disagree with LA Weekly. I mean, he is, he needs more movies to be on that list, in my opinion.
What did they put him on?
He was ranked the 12th greatest slasher villain by the LA Weekly.
Yeah. I like Cropsy a lot. I like the look of him. He's super scary. But 12?
He only got one movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him at 12, man.
no.
There's some really good ones that would have to go behind him for him to even be
Yeah.
12. Like, yeah, I have a feeling whoever wrote that wasn't too big into 80s slashers.
Yeah. So ratings. Rotten Tom, 83%. IMDb gave it a 6.3 out of 10. Letterboxd at 3.1 out of 5. And 89% of Google users liked this movie. If you would like to watch it, you can currently find it streaming on Tubi and Shudder. All right, you ready to dive into the plot of The Burning?
I'm burning.
You're burning to do it?
Do it.
The Burning sounds like it could also be a killer STD.
I'm sure it may not be called The Burning, but somewhere out there's a horror movie of we know that there's
The
killer
Contracted.
STD. Yeah.
Contracted 1
Yeah,
and 2.
yeah. Just as I was saying that, I thought about it, and I'm like, wait a minute, we've seen those.
Which is a really good indie movie. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
That might be a cover at some point.
But you could totally name that movie The Burning too. Even though she doesn't burn, she just falls apart.
It's got to be a male character. He just wakes up one day and his dick's burning, and next thing you know, everybody's dead.
Yeah. All right, so we start off by looking at an old wooden cabin in the middle of the night at a place called Camp Blackfoot. And we see that this cabin is the sleeping quarters for a bunch of up-to-no-good teenage boys. And while most of the cabin is fast asleep, we see that a small group of them are fully awake and making some kind of plan. So the leader of this group says, "Tonight's the night Cropsy's gonna get what he deserves." Now, Cropsy is like the camp caretaker / maintenance man, and according to these kids, he's a fucking bastard from the town of Bastardsonville. because they start talking about how he bullies campers and he likes to beat up children. And apparently, he has been getting away with this for years. And this little group of young men are right now, at this moment, planning to finally get him back with the biggest prank the camp has ever seen. Now, despite the fact that they are talking about pulling this prank off, they don't actually say what the prank is. They're just like, he's going to freak, and when he sees it, he's going to have a heart attack. So we don't know what's going to happen yet. We then see the teens pull out a cardboard box where they then look inside and they almost jump in excitement. The leader then asks one of the others for matches, and they all place their hands in the middle, like kind of like the go team thing, like sports
Go
people
team, go.
do. Yeah. But there is one kid, he kind of hesitates. After taking a second to think about it and some reassurance from the others, he then places his hand in the middle with the rest of the gang. So the boys then sneak out and head across the camp to Cropsy's cabin, where they find him fast asleep. And we see here that he has his own cabin, so he's in there all by himself. And we also see that his bed is right next to a window. And apparently, Cropsy doesn't believe in blinds or curtains or anything, because the boys are able to just look right in there and see him laying there.
He don't have time for that.
No.
He probably cut him down with his hedging shears.
So the leader then asks for the box and the matches, and right before he heads inside, he tells the rest of the gang to go around to the backside and watch from the window. He then sneaks in, where he goes to place the box on this little side table next to his bed, and we get our first look at Cropsy, and he is a very unattractive man. He looks like if Oscar the Grouch and Lurch had a son.
Bro, I seen an interview with him, very old and
Still
even worse.
Still bad.
It's pretty bad.
He looks like if you walked through a garbage dump in socks with no shoes, he looks like the socks.
He said that his son was born the day before he had to leave to shoot this movie. Like literally,
Terrible timing.
they brought him home the day after he was born, and he literally left to the airport right after that. So he was like super bummed out while they were shooting this. And my thought was, who the fuck let this guy knock them up?
He is. Yeah.
He's a nice guy, so I feel bad for saying that. I pray to God he doesn't listen to the show.
Yeah, he probably doesn't. So we just
doesn't understand podcasts.
What were we talking about on the Patreon news about older people? Probably senior citizens probably don't listen.
No.
So anyway, the leader then opens up the box and he pulls out the matches, where he then places the flame into the box, lighting something. And once he finishes this, he then reaches his hands in and he pulls out what's inside. He then places the object down on the table and gives the gang the signal. And after this, he runs outside to join his friends at the window as they all begin banging on the glass in order to wake Cropsy up to see his surprise. He then slowly opens his eyes, and after finally waking up a bit, he spots the most hideous thing ever. It looks to be a human, decomposed, rotting skull with like worms and maggots crawling all over it, and 2 candles in the eye sockets. What the fuck? Like, where did they get this?
Well, so I watched, and so they don't show it in the box, but it looks like it was something that was ordered. Like they had this thing special ordered and delivered to them. So I wonder if it was some type of like cool practical effect that he had decorated. Because one of the kids they're talking about, like, it's awesome. He shows it to the other one. So, I mean, I would imagine that he didn't like dig up an actual body.
Well, that's
for
my
this.
thought. Like, did he make it or did they fucking steal it from a grave?
I hope they didn't steal it from a grave, but I will say, holy shit, that would have fucking scared the living fuck out of me.
Yeah, that's gross. Yeah, I mean, it even has real bugs on it. Like, there's literally like bugs crawling on it. So anyway, Cropsy sees this shit and he flips out, which, I don't blame him. So when he starts freaking out, he smacks this thing away from him. But when he does this, it causes the thing to fall on his bed. And remember, it has candles in it, which causes his blanket and legs to catch fire. Well, his blanket must have been made from like 100% wool because it goes up in flames in seconds. And this causes him to start kicking his legs to get the fire out. And when this happens, he kicks over a fucking gas can that he has for some reason next to his bed.
It's those petroleum sheets.
Why would you have a gas can next to your bed? Like, I feel like that's probably dangerous to, like, smell gas fumes
Bro, it
all
was the
night.
80s. That was just normal.
Yeah. So this causes him to just erupt in flames. And when the boys see this, they're like, oh shit, like this got out of hand really quickly. Cropsy, who is now completely on fire, along with his whole cabin, takes off running out of the door, just like flailing his arms like one of those inflatable blow up guys you see at the used car lot. And we get one of my favorite things from old horror movies, a badass stuntman doing a full body burn. There's just something about a crazy ass dude who sets his whole body on fire just for my entertainment really gets to me.
So, interesting thing about the stuntman that did that.
He was Tom Savini.
According to Tom, so the legs on fire was Tom Savini. But the stuntman that came in and did it, according to Tom Savini, he said he was 17. I looked at his age. It looked like he was 18 at the time. 18-year-old stunt coordinator.
Wow.
Came from a family of famous stunt coordinators. His grandfather was, so his name was Reed Rondell. He was the grandson of famous stunt coordinator Ronald Rondell. And his dad was also a famous stunt coordinator. So that's why he was able to, at 17, 18 years old, be the stunt coordinator, stuntman on a horror movie. Unfortunately, a couple of years after this, he worked on a TV series called Airwolf and died in a plane crash.
That
Or not a
sucks.
plane crash, a helicopter crash during the filming of the show.
That sucks,
And he
man.
lived to 22 years old.
Yeah, I love the old school stunt guys. They get massive amounts of respect. I know we have stunt guys now, but you know, with the advancements in filmmaking, being a stuntman is not as lucrative as it used to be, and it's kind of a dying thing. And I hate that because I think stunt people are fucking badass.
Man, I agree. And you see, like, Kane Hodder talking about, because for those who don't know, he had a really bad accident during a fire scene. And then in part 7, Friday the 13th, part 7, he does this fucking, like, super long burn scene.
It was like the longest
And,
at the time.
You know, he's talking about how serious this is back then, like, for burn scenes like that. This one went on quite some time and predated that part 7 burn scene by quite some time. And it's weird because whenever you look at the behind the scenes picture, this 17, 18-year-old, I mean, he looks like a kid. And he's there like as the main stunt guy setting himself on fire. And just huge props to him,
Yeah.
man. That was really cool. Really, really sad to hear that he ended up passing away. I think the last movie he did was St. Elmo's Fire.
So the boys are now just standing there in front of Cropsy's cabin, watching him run around while on fire, when he then finally realizes that he needs to stop, drop, and roll, which he does. And fortunately for him, he ends up rolling down a hill and into a small stream, which puts the fire out. Once this happens, the group of boys then says, fuck this, and they take off running back to their cabin as the screen fades to black. So we then jump to St. Catherine's Hospital 1 week later, where we see this orderly talking to a new doctor, and he's kind of an asshole because he's like, once you've seen what I've seen, you won't like your job anymore. The doctor then tries to blow this off and head a different way, but the orderly grabs his arm and says he wants to show him something. He then starts telling him about Cropsy's burned body, saying that he shouldn't even be alive. We can tell that the doctor has no interest in going in and looking at this, but the orderly keeps pulling him towards the room. Dude, I would be like, get your fucking non-medical degree having ass off me. Like, I'm a motherfucking doctor. Like, you don't tell me where to go.
Bro, could you imagine being a burn victim and hearing this guy, like, sitting out? Because he's awake in there, you hear him breathing
Yeah,
and
fuck
shit,
this
and
guy.
he's like, "This is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen, like, you're not ever gonna wanna fucking look at anybody after you look at this guy, like, he's awful."
Yeah, this guy fucking
I'd
sucks.
be like, fuck you."
So he then drags this chump ass doctor in this room, but we can't see Cropsy because he's in like this tent thing over his bed. The orderly then puts his hand on the opening of the tent and looks back towards the doctor and says, "You ain't never gonna forget this freak." And right as he says this, we see Cropsy's very burned arm reach out and grab the orderly, who immediately starts screaming like a little bitch, causing the doctor to run out of the room scared as hell. And then we get our title card, The Burning.
The arm looked awesome, by the way.
Yep.
Good sneak peek as to what our killer might look like.
So after the credits, we then jump back to the same hospital, but it is 5 years later, where we see an orderly pushing Cropsy in a wheelchair towards the door as we begin to hear what a bunch of doctors said to Cropsy recently. One says, "Now that you've got your strength, it is time to leave," which I found funny for some reason because he's like, "You gotta get the fuck out. Like, you got no money. You don't got no insurance. You
Here.
can't stay here anymore."
Insurance is past due.
God.
They're not paying anymore.
Could you imagine how much a 5-year hospital bill would be?
Well, probably about a
$1 trillion.
6-day stay in nowadays money.
So,
In the 80s, not quite as bad in the 80s, but still probably a lot of money.
yeah. So we also hear another doctor say that he's lucky to be alive, and unfortunately, none of these skin grafts took. So Cropsy's out here looking like Freddy Krueger. As he gets closer to the door, we then hear a nurse tell him that even though she knows he still hates those kids, it was purely an accident and he's got to let it go. So after he's kicked out of the hospital, what's the first thing he does? Well, he heads downtown to pick up a prostitute. Of course.
I think that scene, upon going back and watching it, those him being talked to, like those voices as he's being rolled out, end up being really important to the storyline. We see that over this course of time, he went through a lot of like therapy and psychological issues at dealing with resentment towards these kids.
Oh, yeah. So he's going to get this prostitute, right? You know when you're grilling a hot dog and you leave it on too long?
Oh, God.
You think that's what his dick looks like?
Probably don't have a dick.
You think his dick burn off?
Probably burn off, yeah. That's just straight flesh, man. There ain't even no bone to hold that thing together.
Oh, man.
It's just got like
Just some crusty balls and no dick.
no, not even you heard him. The skin grafts didn't take. He's just got two veiny balls slinging around, no sack.
So you think
He's
he's kind of like,
sackless.
he's like Frank from Hellraiser?
He has. I can tell you this. He has no interest in fucking this woman.
I mean, he might be like the Barbie where it's just nothing down there's just smooth. So he gets this lady of the night and she takes him up to her room. And before he heads inside, she flips the lights out. And she doesn't think that this is odd that he wants the lights out because apparently a lot of guys want to keep the room mostly dark, probably so they don't have to see her. And she starts talking about all these dudes she fucks when she suddenly says, "Hey, can we hurry this thing up? I got other dudes to meet up with."
And then her dumbass says that and is like, yeah, that's fine. You know, a lot of guys like a lot of weird stuff and keep the lights off. And then she walks over and turns the fucking light on.
And turns the lamp on. As she begins to undress, we see a lightning strike flash through the window, which lights up Cropsy's face. And when she sees this, let's just say she's not very compassionate to the disabled because she's immediately like, "Oh God, no, leave me alone."
Yeah, I thought you were supposed to be open to business from anybody with money.
She is not at all like that prostitute from Forrest Gump that was gonna fuck Lieutenant Dan even though he hadn't showered in days and had no legs. You remember, like, he's like, yeah, it's like the 80s, and she's all about it.
New Year's, man.
Yeah,
New
yeah.
Year's.
Yeah, not at all the same kind of lady of the night as her. So once she is like, "Get out of my place," Cropsy's like, "Fuck this bitch," and he starts choking her. He then grabs a big ass pair of scissors and stabs her in the stomach a couple times. He then kind of pushes her like halfway out of the window as he continues to stab and slice her. We then see a big splash of blood land on the mirror and the screen fades to black. This whole scene reminds me a lot of the movie Maniac.
Holy shit! I literally had that. Like, I was waiting for you to quit talking. Yeah, this is very different. This intro is very different than the rest of the movie. Like,
Yeah.
Going into it, it's a camp slasher, that, and then you watch this beginning, and it is like super Maniac. Like, he even starts choking her at one point, and I'm like, holy shit, did I put the wrong movie in?
Well, even the like when he's walking up to meet her, you get that my favorite grimy 80s like trashy New York. Yeah, very Maniac. So after all that, we then head on over to Camp Stonewater, which I don't know if this is like this isn't the same camp just with a name change, is it? It could be. It could be a different camp. It could be a completely different location. I don't know.
I think it's close to where the original camp was.
Well, they
but I
say
think
it
that
is.
the original camp burned down. Like the whole camp
How'd
ended
the
up
whole
getting burned
goddamn
down.
camp burn down?
I don't know, but a main character in this mentions this later on down the road.
He
when he's telling the
does,
story.
but there's some other things in his story that's not true. So I don't know if if it's the same camp and I don't know. So we then see a bunch of the campers playing baseball where one of the girls hits it into the woods, causing another girl to go into the brush and look for it. And while she's doing this, we get that awesome killer POV where we see Cropsy watching her from a few feet away. And while this is going on, we meet some of our main characters here. First, we have Eddie, who's like your typical New York Italian guy who's like overly confident and aggressive, and he has a major thing for a girl named Karen. We then have Dave, who he's like that guy he's like pretty much cool with just about everybody, and he's pretty popular here at camp, especially because if you give him money, he will smuggle whatever you ask for into the camp, like Playboys and condoms.
Bro, this is, if for those that don't know, this is the bald guy from Seinfeld
Yeah.
with hair.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, is that him with hair?
Yeah, and he plays such a different character in this than most people are used to seeing.
He's like one of my favorite characters in this movie.
He's great in this, yeah. So we then jump back to the girl who's looking for the ball in the woods, which, by the way, her fucking name is Tiger. Who names their kid, let alone their daughter, Tiger?
I hope that's her nickname.
Yeah,
not her
I hope
legal
so.
name.
That's not even a good nickname. So she's looking around when we suddenly see Cropsy pull out his brand new pair of hand shears. And if you aren't familiar with hand shears, they're basically big ass scissors used to trim bushes.
Yeah, they're hedge scissors or
They're garden shears or
Yeah.
hand shear, whatever you want to call them. So he busts those things out and he's slowly creeping towards Tiger. But Tiger is so focused on looking for this ball, she has no idea that he is right behind her. And right before he springs his trap, she finds the ball and runs back to the game, essentially giving Cropsy murder blue balls. So after this, we then jump on over to the mess hall for dinner where we meet some more of our main characters. We have Karen, who we already kind of met at the baseball game when Eddie was attempting to hit on her. But this is where we kind of actually learn a little more about her. And her deal is she's like the nice, good girl next door, and she really likes Eddie. But at the same time, his aggressive behavior and coarse personality makes her a little scared of him sometimes.
she is scared Eddie is going to rape her.
Pretty
but She
much.
likes him too much to blow him off.
Yeah,
It's a very
kind of a
weird
weird
dynamic.
Yeah. We then have Michelle, who is one of the counselors, and she is really nice and responsible. She does a good job looking out for the girl she's in charge of, and she's also dating fellow counselor Todd, who we'll meet here soon. During this scene, we see Karen talking to Michelle about her issues with Eddie, explaining that she even went to the supervisor of the camp to try to get out of the up-and-coming camping trip. Michelle then asks her what the supervisor said, and Karen tells her that he said that she should still go, but if things get out of hand with Eddie, she would be allowed to leave the trip early and come back to camp. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because it becomes a bit of a plot point later. So the next morning, we head on over to the girls' cabin where we see most of them are still asleep, but one girl named Sally gets up a little earlier than everyone else and heads to the showers. Before we dive into this scene, I just want to point out, we see this girl's cabin, and they're all laying there with like one or two windows open, no fucking AC, in the summer, with fucking flies flying around, like that one lands on that girl's face. I would absolutely hate this. This would be miserable.
It's interesting because it's summer camp and there is flies buzzing around, but there's multiple scenes later in the movie where people mention being cold. So I'm wondering, like, what part of the year is this?
Well, it's also New York, so I don't know. Maybe it gets a little chilly at night in
That is
summer.
true.
I don't know.
Their summers might be freezing.
Yeah, but the waking up in the morning, being hot, and like bugs landing on me is not for me. But anyway, Sally heads to the shower where we see her remove her clothes. And this is where we get our first boob shot of the film.
Soapy titties.
Soapy titties are coming up. So she's all naked and soapy, and she starts to hear some noises, which she thinks is kind of weird. And after a few minutes of hearing this, she finally looks to see what is going on when suddenly we see Michelle and the rest of the girls hear a loud scream from the showers. They all come running where they come across a boy named Alfred attempting to flee the scene and a very upset Sally. Counselor Todd and Eddie grab Alfred before he can escape, and Sally informs them that she caught him watching her in the shower. Todd asks what's going on here, and Michelle is pissed when she tells him. Now, I don't know if you paid attention to everyone's reaction in the background.
Oh, I sure did.
But when Michelle tells everybody this, all the girls, they're like horrified. And Todd's like, he's like that fucking dumbass kind of look. And Eddie's in the background laughing his ass off.
Bro, Eddie has what I can only explain as a proud smile.
Yeah, he's over there just laughing his ass off.
So, it's like, that boy.
So Alfred tells him that he only meant to scare her, which we all know is absolute bullshit. He was trying to catch a glimpse of them soapy titties.
Yeah, I went to scare you in the shower that's actively running that I know you're naked in.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a bullshit story.
Uh-huh. But Todd tries to calm the situation down by sending Alfred away and telling a very angry Michelle that he will talk to him. So back at the boys' cabin, Todd talks to Alfred, asking him what the hell he was thinking. And Alfred says that he is constantly being bullied here and has no friends and didn't even want to come to this camp. Which, how does any of that correlate to him being a peeping Tom?
Yeah, and the dynamics that you see is that most of the kids are really nice to him, although he doesn't fit in. So he's not being bullied by everybody. He's just a fucking weirdo.
Also, why is he sweating so much in this scene?
Because he just got caught peeping Tom.
Like Todd, totally dry. And Alfred's over there looking like the fucking Jordan Peele meme where the sweat's just like pouring from his hairline, like all over his face.
He's thinking about those fucking soapy titties and Sally's.
So Todd feels a little sympathy for Alfred, telling him that he doesn't have to take on the whole camp by himself. And if he's having problems, he can come to him. He also says that he understands a little what Alfred is going through because 5 years ago, he himself got in so much trouble, he was kicked out of camp. And I said to myself, there's no way Todd was in summer camp 5 years ago. He looks to be about 25 or 26.
Well, he's not playing a 25 or 26-year-old. He's playing I would imagine he's the head counselor over the males, so probably like 18, 19. So
he don't look it.
Yeah. Well, do they ever? This is an 80s slasher. They can't use juveniles. They got soapy titties everywhere and sex and drugs.
YouTube's gonna fucking bury this thing. So after they have this talk, Alfred goes to leave, and as he is exiting the cabin, he is confronted by Sally's boyfriend, Glazer, who is pissed about the shower thing. He actually grabs Alfred by his hair and starts roughing him up, telling him that he should twist his head off for that stunt. He then says that he is only going to tell him one time, "You stay away from my girl."
So I hate Glazer, and
Doesn't
they
everybody?
make Glazer out to be the awful bully of camp. But in Glazer's defense, I don't fucking blame him. If
I don't
I
either.
found out that this fucking weirdo was just peeping on my naked girlfriend in the shower, I would have fucked him up.
I agree with Glazer here. But while this is going on, Todd interrupts and pretty much saves Alfred from getting an ass whooping, essentially telling Glazer to back off. He then sends Alfred away and informs Glazer that if he finds out Glazer's causing anyone any problems in this camp, he's gonna bust his ass.
Bro, I like Todd's style. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to the fucking administrator. I'm gonna fuck you up.
I like the saying "bust your ass."
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that's such an 80s, like, "I'm gonna bust your ass." Like, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't know. That faded out. We need to bring it back.
Todd don't take no shit. Gator don't take no shit.
Gator don't take no shit from nobody. So next we head on over to the lake where we see everyone swimming and having a good time. And we see here that Dave and his little group of buddies are trying to take Alfred under their wing a little and just be cool with him. So Dave, Woodstock, and Fish are all trying to explain to Alfred how to swim, and they all jump into the water to kind of show him how easy it is, when suddenly Glazer comes running up behind and pushes Alfred in. Now, this pisses Dave off, and he has words with Glazer while Woodstock and Fish help Alfred back to the dock. Glazer then jumps in and swims over to this floating dock where Sally and the other girls are hanging out, and this is where Dave and the gang decide to get Glazer back. So Dave then asks Woodstock if he has the pea shooter on him, and he smiles real big, and he said he sure does. We then see him pull out a fucking airsoft gun and take aim at Glazer. Where the fuck was he keeping this thing at?
He keeps it tucked
Yeah,
at
but
all times.
he was swimming with it in his swimming trunks.
He keeps that thing on him
keeps that
at
thing on him.
all times.
Uh-huh. So Dave gives the order and Woodstock fires, hitting Glazer right in the ass, which causes everyone to burst out in laughter as an angry Glazer looks around to see who did it. This is a really good shot from pretty far away.
Yeah, I'm like, what if he missed and like took one of those girls' eyes out?
I
or
thought about
something?
that very thing. So later that night, at the boys' cabin, we see Woodstock and Fish just hanging out playing cards while Glazer lays on his bunk. Dave comes in with a paper bag full of nudie mags for the guys and condoms for Glazer.
We all know the kid who had to hook up on the nudie mag.
Yeah.
Go,
Yes.
Dave.
So while this is going on, we get the Cropsy POV of him lurking outside, and Alfred, who is just laying on his bunk looking out the window, catches a glimpse of him, and he alerts everyone else, who of course don't take him seriously. Todd then shows up at the cabin and makes the boys head to the chow hall for dinner, and right after arriving, the camp supervisor makes some announcements about the big overnight camping trip the older kids will go on tomorrow. So this trip is a 3-day canoe trip to Devil's Creek, led by Todd and Michelle. Pretty much all of our main characters are going, and this is the last big camp event before they all return home when they get back. So the next day, we see everyone split up into 5 different canoes, all heading down the river while splashing each other and having a good time. So after a long day of paddling down the river, the group stops to camp for the night on the shore, and we quickly jump to later that night where we see everyone gathered around a fire while Todd tells the story of Cropsy in Camp Blackfoot, which is coincidentally just across the river. So he tells everyone that Cropsy was a drunk and a sadist who really enjoyed hurting and scaring people, and he carried around these sharp garden shears. Then one day, Cropsy started fucking with this kid from Brooklyn, following him around night and day, making the kid's life a living hell. But this kid from Brooklyn was the wrong guy to be fucking with, because one night he got his buddies together and decided to play a prank on Cropsy. But unfortunately, the prank goes wrong and Cropsy catches fire and can't escape his cabin. He also says here that the boys tried to get him out but couldn't reach him, which we know is a goddamn lie because some boys just stood there and did nothing. So, anyway, Cropsy's on fire and he's trapped when he is suddenly able to burst out of the building, where he runs out into the yard, and while still on fire, he yells out to the boys, "I will return and I will have my revenge," which also did not happen.
Well, I think there's just parts of the story that's embellished because
No,
it's a campfire horror story.
I get that, but my whole point is we can't, where he says like Camp Blackfoot is, we can't trust that because he's obviously changed some parts of the story to fit this really good campfire story.
Well, I think that though the parts of the campfire story that he switched makes it it's what makes it a good campfire story. Whereas I do think that the camp did burn down. Well, maybe not all the cabins, but we know that one cabin burned down. Like that shit,
Yeah,
it's
just
gone.
one cabin though. The next day, authorities never find his body, meaning that he must have survived. Todd then says that basically he lives out in the woods now, eating whatever he can find, including raw human remains from kids that he has killed. And right now, he's out there, watching and waiting,
And
commiserating.
commiserating.
every time they did that, I just never could, get that out of my head.
Same. And it's great because it was way before that song was written.
And
I like to think that Blink-182 actually was big fans of The Burning, and they took that.
yeah, they could have. So as soon as Todd ends the story with "You're dead," Eddie, who is wearing a mask, pops out of the woods from behind some of the campers and scares everybody. And I thought, God damn, camp looks fun. I know we talk about this on every camp episode we do, but man, this looks so fun. Like I would totally go. Can we have an adult camp?
Yeah, so the for one, the mask that Eddie's wearing looks legitimately creepy. That has scared the fuck out of me too.
Kind of reminds me of Jason's face in part 2.
One thing that I think that this movie does so well, better than a lot of camp slashers, is the chemistry between the crew. It legitimately, like you said, it looks fun. Like, everybody looks like this is a legitimate group of
Campers,
older
yeah.
teens having fucking the time of their life. And a big part of that, so I seen the interview with the actress who played Michelle, and she said this town that they were in had nothing to do. So they spent weeks together and all became really close friends. So a lot of this stuff is genuine. It was easy to shoot for them.
Yeah, and another thing I gotta say here, Todd is a damn good storyteller, especially campfire stories. Every time I see this part, even considering the fact that I already know the story, I've already seen this shit a bunch of times, I get sucked into it. I'm into his storytelling. It's
Yeah.
good. So later on, we see Eddie and Karen walking through the woods towards the water for a little alone time. And I know we've talked about it outside this episode, but I hate these scenes coming up because everything except the campfire story part is so fucking dark. I cannot hardly see shit. And I found out that it is because they were all shot during the day and they were color corrected in the edit to make it look like night. Except for the campfire parts, they were all daytime shots. And thankfully, you had the Blu-ray version that I went and watched, and you can see so much. I even showed you what I seen originally, and it was fucking awful.
Yeah, it's the HD restoration that
Yeah.
they did for Scream Factory, and I highly, highly suggest that if you are a fan of this movie or you're listening to this and thinking about watching this, spend the money, get the Scream Factory version of it, because you showed me some of what you were. The blood looks so good, and it's not just the brightness, it's the colors. The blood looks so good in my version, and what you showed me looked like orangish red paint.
Yeah, and there's a lot of this whole thing that's about to happen. You can only see a little bit of her skin tone on her face from the light. Other than that, everything's pitch black. You can't see the kill, you can't see the lead up to the kill, none of it. The version that I watched is the Tubi version. The Shudder version may look a little better. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that it's ripped off from the DVD version. And it's worth it to get the Blu-ray by a mile.
Yeah, and a big part of this movie is, and what makes it as good of a movie as it is the practical effects. And anybody who's ever watched practical effects, like really, really old school practical effects, and the blood is not right, it ruins the whole thing. And that version you showed me, it was really quick, but the blood literally looked like orangish red paint, and it kind of ruined it. Like, it ruined the look of the kill. So you definitely gotta get the restored version of it, where you can actually see the kills and the effects look really good.
Yeah, I wrote the episode based off of the shitty version, and then I actually went back and watched the movie for a whole third time this week just so I could watch the Blu-ray version because it looks so much better, and I'm glad I did. It was worth it. So anyway, Eddie and Karen, they're walking and they're talking about Cropsy when Eddie shoots his shot and tries to kiss Karen, which you can tell she's very hesitant about. He then says that they should go skinny dipping in the water for a bit, to which she hesitates as well to that, but he convinces her to come along and they both get into the water naked.
Actually, he promises her that it's just gonna be a little
Yeah.
swim.
And at first, everything seems to be going well until Eddie tries to fuck her in the water. She's trying very nicely to let him down, but he's just isn't taking no for an answer. All these dudes in this movie are so fucking horny and aggressive.
Well, Eddie is worse than most. He is like, I mean, he's on the verge of raping her or like beating her
And
for having sex.
Glazer's the same way.
I think Eddie's a little worse, but Glazer he is definitely on that level of like, whoa, a little too creepish. And what's sad is both of these girls really like these
Yeah.
guys. They
Mhm.
just don't want to be fucked out in the open in the middle of nowhere as what they're playing, older teenagers, which, I mean, I can't say I don't blame them. And Eddie gets so fucking mad. I thought, like, Cropsy may have been sneaking up and walked up on a murder.
Yeah, he could have
Like,
been.
what if Cropsy walked up to try to kill one of them and walked up and Eddie was already killing her?
Yeah,
He's like, fuck.
I mean, he is definitely. There was some DV charges in his future, for sure.
He's literally like, what the fuck's wrong with you, bitch?
I don't know if this is just like a movie thing because we've seen this a lot in 80s horror films, or was it like really like this? I don't know. So he pulls her in close and he's attempting to make out with her, telling her not to fight it, and she keeps nervously laughing while pushing him away. And while this is going on, we see Cropsy has snuck up on them and is watching them from the tree line. So Karen pulls away, causing Eddie to aggressively grab her and pull her back. And this is it for Karen, as Eddie goes in for another unwanted kiss, Karen pulls away and smacks him in the face, saying, "You promised." And this pisses Eddie off as he smacks the water hard, splashing the shit out of Karen and telling her to get the fuck out of his face. As Eddie then attempts to beat up the water with his fists, Karen swims back to shore, upset and scared. But when she reaches land, she discovers her clothes are missing, and of course, she thinks it's the other campers playing a prank on her. So she then starts trying to walk back to the camp naked, yelling for whoever took her clothes to give them back. But as she starts walking, she starts finding pieces of her clothing spread out through the woods, hanging on branches. I honestly feel so bad for Karen here. Like, she's this good girl that's like really nice and sweet. She's got this fucking asshole future rapist that keeps going after her.
That she has a crush on. That's what makes it really bad. She likes him, but he's just like too much.
Well, then she turns down the sex with him. He gets super mad, which causes her to be, she's scared. And now she's got to walk through the woods alone. And she discovers like someone stole her fucking clothes. So now she's fucking naked and afraid.
She is naked and afraid. Before that was a show.
What a bad situation for someone that's like so nice.
I will say that this was a slick move by Cropsy to get her away from
Yeah.
the water. He left her some breadcrumbs of her own panties.
So, as Karen walks through the woods, picking up her clothes while crying, Cropsy pops out from behind, grabs her, placing his hand over her mouth, and slices her throat with the blade of the shears. And as he lets go, we see a shocked Karen attempt to realize what has just happened as tons of blood begins pouring from her throat and down her chest before finally falling down and dying.
We get our first camp kill.
Yep.
And it looked pretty fucking awesome.
Unless you watch the Tubi version.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Yeah, the HD version looks so fucking awesome. The throat slit, they even slow it down. It's like slow motion as the blood's like running down her body. So 80s. It's like 80s camp slashers, fuck.
So the next morning, Michelle and Todd wake Eddie up asking where Karen is. And at first, Eddie brushes this off and tries to go back to sleep, but Todd and Michelle are pissed, thinking Eddie must have done something to her. And I don't think they think like he killed her. He just upset her or let her get lost in the woods. So Eddie's like, I don't know where she is. What are you guys talking about? And they say that the last time anyone seen her, she was walking off with him and she never came back. Michelle doesn't hold back her feelings here and almost accuses Eddie of killing her, saying he may have taken it too far. She also says all the guys here make her sick, and Karen told her that she was afraid of him. And I was like, well, go ahead, Michelle, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame everybody for questioning Eddie, and
I
I
don't
don't know
either.
how he is upset that they're questioning him. Like, the dude couldn't be any more closer to a rapist or woman murderer without actually doing it. And then he's surprised that they're wondering where she's at after she was last seen with him off in the woods.
So Todd demands he tell him what happened last night, and he says that they went for a swim. He came on a little strong. She got mad and called him some names and headed back to camp, and that's it.
And now I would suspect him even more.
Yeah. And right after he tells them this, 2 other campers inform Todd and Michelle that all of the canoes are gone. Michelle then has a light bulb moment, telling Todd it was Karen because the camp supervisor told her that if things got out of hand with Eddie, then she could come back to camp if she wanted. Karen must have did that last night, accidentally letting all the canoes float away in the process. Todd's like, I don't know about that. Why would she let all 5 of the canoes go? And Michelle says that she says those magic words, maybe it was one of the other kids pulling a prank. The prank thing is going to be all throughout this movie. So they gather everyone together and ask if anybody knows anything about the missing canoes, and nobody has any clue, except Glazer, who instantly accuses Alfred of doing some weird shit.
Which I don't blame him, because
Yeah.
Alfred is pretty fucking weird. He's like, if I could let all these canoes go, these girls are going to have to shower and get naked somewhere, and I could be behind a tree with my hand in my pants.
So Todd tells everyone to look for them, and if they don't find them, then they will just have to build a raft in order to get back to camp. To which Michelle asks why they can't just walk back, and Todd responds with the fact that the surrounding woods are way too thick. So after a while, Todd sends the kids to find pieces of wood for the raft, and while this is going on, we see Glazer following around Sally, bugging her about sex. Good God, don't these dudes ever get tired of begging these girls to touch their dicks? There's like 2 fucking scenes here, back to back, of Glazer like pinning Sally to a tree and pinning her to a rock to the point where she has to physically fight him off and tell him no. Like,
And
these
the
poor
thing
women.
is, she's like willing to give it up to him.
Just
He's
not
just
now.
like in the middle of the daytime, out in the open, in front of everybody. Like I mean,
Everybody's walking around looking for wood. So you can't really go anywhere and hide because you never know when somebody's going to walk up.
yeah, I thought it was funny. There's like they're up against a tree and she pushes him off, and then they do a quick like 30-second scene. I think like Michelle and Todd talking, and then they cut right back, and now he's got her pinned to a rock, and I'm like, holy
"Jeez."
shit.
So after Glazer's second attempt at sexually assaulting Sally, she tells him maybe later. And this greatly pleases him to the point where he tells her that she can trust him. It's going to be real good.
It's gonna be real, real good.
And we'll see in a
Won't be
little bit.
disappointed.
We'll see in a little bit just how good it is. And while this is happening, we see that again, for the second time that we know of, Alfred is being a creep and watching Sally. Dude, just stop. Just stop that.
I fucking hate Alfred. Man.
Do you
He's
think
such a fucking weirdo to carry through a movie like this?
Do you think Alfred grows up to be a cuck?
I think Alfred grows up to go to prison for like watching some women undress through their window and getting caught.
Like
going to prison.
He never
He is 100% whipping his dick out in a movie theater or something.
It's like he never fucks his wife. Like he just watches other guys fuck her while he hides behind like the nightstand.
Yeah, I don't know if he's like into really watching them fuck, or if it's just like he's obsessed with Sally. Like he wants to see Sally naked.
He's just so fucking just.
He's a weasel. He's a weasel. It's the best word I can think of for him. He's a fucking peeping Tom weasel.
So we see the group has finally finished building the raft and has selected a group of 6 kids to take it back to camp and get some help. And as Todd and Michelle give them instructions and say their goodbyes, we see that Eddie, Woodstock, and Fish are among the 6 heading back. You would think that one of the counselors would go back with them. Maybe they were both like, this shit's probably going to sink, so we'll just send them. If they make it, they make it, but we're not going.
Yeah, that's probably legit.
So we then fast forward a few hours where we see the kids on the raft have been rowing nonstop and are now complaining that they're tired. Woodstock and Eddie tell them to all shut the fuck up and keep going, and this kind of starts an argument. But it gets quickly interrupted when one of the girls spots an empty canoe. Now this canoe is kind of far away, so it takes them a while to row over to it. And right as they get up to it, Cropsy pops out with his shiny new set of shears, butchering all 6 of the campers. We see Fish get stabbed in the chest, Woodstock gets his fingers chopped off, one of the other girls gets her whole fucking forehead slashed open, and Eddie gets knocked on his back and stabbed in the neck. These kills are so fucking Tom Savini, like especially Eddie's neck wound.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my favorite scene of not single shot, but scene of the entire movie. This shit's so fucking brutal, and like, you know, Woodstock's fingers getting cut off looks fucking awesome. Eddie getting stabbed through the throat looks fucking awesome, which was Tom Savini stabbing through. Seeing the behind the scenes on that. And my favorite, which out of all the kills you wouldn't think, but whenever that girl gets slashed across the head, and
looks good.
Her head split open. And the great thing about these kills that we don't get as much in a camp slasher is these are in the daytime.
Yeah.
Like, these are middle of the daytime, middle of the lake, no shadows, anything around. So you get to see every bit of it. And it is gold.
Plus, it's 6 kills in one go.
Yeah.
You don't get to see that often.
Yeah, it's good shit.
So we head back over to the stranded group where we see it is now evening, and we immediately cut to Glazer fucking Sally in the woods. And let's just say Glazer did not live up to his promise that it was going to be good, because Sally is constantly saying it hurts, and Glazer reveals himself to be a 2-pump chump. After Glazer glazes Sally's insides, she says, "That's all," and Glazer responds by collapsing on top of her and saying, "Shit."
Bro, that is like the death blow words that you ever want to hear after you bust a nut is "that's it."
Yeah.
And then on top of that, Sally is so fucking savage that she talks about being cold, and she said, "You didn't do much to warm me up."
Yeah.
I'm like, damn.
Well, what about how before he finishes early, she's like talking about how much it hurts, and I'm like, is he putting it in the right place? Like, Because he even says, he's like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't
Well,
know
you
what
remember,
happened?
Glazer doesn't look at any porn. He gives the other guy shit for that. Maybe he stuffed his balls and all in there.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, he blew it. Yeah, when she made it a point to be like, "You didn't do much to warm me up," I was like, "God damn."
Yeah.
That's like he won't even look at her either. They did such a good job at this being like a legitimate scene 'cause he's so embarrassed. He's like, "I don't know what happened. Maybe next time." And if you remember, he got mad at Dave because the condoms that he got Dave to bring him were not lubricated, so he refused to take them. So I'm pretty sure he just glazed up her insides with some babies.
Yep. Yeah, so she says she's cold, so Glazer says that he'll run over to the camp and steal some matches in order to build a fire. And while this is going on, we see that somebody is watching. Is it Alfred or is it Cropsy? We don't know.
It's always Alfred.
So after Glazer leaves, Sally sits up when suddenly Cropsy pops out and goes to stab her with the shears. She is able to fight him off for a bit, but before we can see what happens, we cut over to Glazer arriving in camp. After he grabs the matches and starts back, we see Albert get up from his sleeping bag and follow him. Why he decides he needs to see what Glazer's doing, I don't know.
Oh, he's trying to people and him and Sally having sex.
God,
Like
man.
that's the thing. He literally sees him going back to Sally and he's following them so he can watch them have sex.
You know,
His whole thing is a peeping Tom.
He's acting like he hasn't been caught yet. And it's like, no, you've been caught. Everyone fucking doesn't like what you're doing, and you're still taking every opportunity to continue to do it.
Well, that's the problem with like creepy peeping Toms is they continue to do it. Like how many of these guys you hear get out of prison and then get caught doing it again?
I bet you he grows up to be like a nosy ass fucking neighbor that's like the president of HOAs. Like he's all up in your fucking business of what you're doing.
Be on the sexual predator list.
That too.
Not doing very good.
They can be one and the same. So Glazer finally returns, somehow not realizing Alfred is only like 10 feet behind him. And he's not even like trying to be that sneaky. And when he gets back, he finds Sally laying under the sleeping bag. So he starts calling her name, to which, of course, she doesn't respond, causing Glazer to reach down and pull the sleeping bag away from her face. And before he even gets a chance to react, we see the blade of the shears stab into his neck. As Glazer begins to struggle, Cropsy lifts him up in the air using the shears, pinning him to a tree. And all of this goes down with Alfred watching in horror.
And this kill was done really cool. So they did this all in one shot, other than his body falling. So they brought in like 2 long logs so for him to lift his legs off of the ground. And then Tom Savini had taken a pair of shears and he had them rounded off, to go perfectly around his neck. But then they got a welder to weld on the tips that they cut off of the scissors so they could actually be jabbed into the tree. And so this whole like him being off the ground, the tips being jabbed into the tree from through his neck, all that shit's one shot.
Nice.
It's fucking awesome.
This is honestly like, this competed for my favorite kills in a movie. This is a good kill. It looks amazing, the shears in his neck. So as Glazer's blood-soaked dead body falls to the ground, Alfred takes off running, and once he returns to the camp, he immediately wakes up Todd to tell him what just happened. And at first, Todd doesn't have much of a reaction. That is, until Alfred tells him Glazer's dead, to which a very aggravated Todd gets out of his sleeping bag and says, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Which for some reason cracks me up every time. I don't know what it is about the what the fuck are you. It's like he's so done with this guy and in this shit.
Yeah, because he's not believable. Like he's the one kid that could have woke him up and told him that, where he would have been like, "Shut the fuck up! What are you talking about? You're full of shit."
So even though Todd doesn't really believe him, he agrees to go check it out, and when they get there, he quickly finds Glazer's dead body. But only seconds after arriving, Cropsy springs his trap immediately hitting Todd in the head with the shears. Now, Todd is able to duck a little bit, causing the shears to just knock him out but not kill him. Alfred sees this and takes off running with Cropsy in hot pursuit. So back at the camp, it is now morning and Michelle and the gang see the raft slowly drifting back towards them, which is confusing to everyone because they were supposed to go get help the day before. And the raft is empty. So what could have happened to everybody? Dave then tells everyone that this is probably just a prank, which puts them all at ease. But Michelle thinks something is up and decides to swim out and investigate. And while all this is happening, we see that Todd has recovered from his Cropsy attack and ran back to camp, where he spots Michelle in the water and all of the other kids standing on shore watching her. And before he gets a chance to warn everyone, Michelle goes to climb onto the raft when suddenly a severed arm falls over and smacks her in the face, causing her to freak out. And right as she turns around to swim back, Woodstock's dead body comes floating up to her, causing her to lose it again. She's never going to financially recover from this.
Bro, so Woodstock's dead body looked amazing.
Did he make a
No,
fake
that's-
version of him, or was that him?
That was him.
That's him in
There's
makeup?
a whole behind the scenes of them putting that makeup on him because he got stuck holding his mouth open like that for hours while they applied all that makeup.
Well, he looks so stiff, is
Yeah.
why I didn't know if they made a replica of him.
Yeah, so there's actually like a cool like video behind the scenes of Tom Savini like doing the cap for his head and applying all the makeup and stuff. But one thing that was really cool is the actress that played Michelle said they hid all that from her. So she knew the arm was supposed to be pulled off and severed, but she didn't know that his body was going to float up. Like they hid him over there behind the raft, and I guess he swam over and popped up. So that reaction that she has when he floats up is, she said, was legitimate. Scared the shit out of her.
That's awesome. I love that. So we then jump forward a bit where we see all of the campers freaking out and they think they're going to die. And Todd's telling Michelle to take the rest of them on the raft and go get help while he tries to find Alfred, who is still out in the woods running from Cropsy. He should have just fucking left
Or
him.
can you imagine how long and how much of a rage it would have taken for him to cut 6 bodies up like that with a pair of fucking hedge scissors?
I don't know
Like,
if you
they're
would be
literally-
able to do all that with
literally-
hedge scissors, but
I mean, arms cut off and shit.
I think he's got
You
some
can
loppers
if you're
too.
like a superhuman angry killer in
I
the
think-
woods and an 80s slasher.
I think he's got some loppers, man. We just don't see him.
You think he pulled out the axe?
He's got a whole landscaping kit somewhere. So Todd then grabs an axe and heads out in search of Alfred, while Michelle and the gang finally arrive at the camp. Michelle immediately finds the supervisor, Jeff, and tells him that she needs the boat, to which he is a total asshole about. She then tells him that there's a killer out there, and he has the same reaction that everybody in this fucking movie has every time something happens. This must be a prank. After some convincing, he and Michelle call the police and head out on the boat looking for Todd, Alfred, and the killer. We then head on over to Alfred, who has found an old, abandoned, falling apart building in the woods, and just when he thinks he has outrun the killer, Cropsy creeps up from behind and grabs him by the throat. Todd, who isn't too far away, hears Alfred's screams and runs in that direction, where he too finds the abandoned building. And we then see that Cropsy has gagged Alfred and stabbed him kind of through the arm, through the shears, like kind of pinning him to the wall. And lucky for him, though, Todd has been able to follow his screaming, so he's pretty quickly able to find where Alfred is being kept. But the question is, where the hell is the killer?
And but when I first seen this, I thought like the walled ruins in the middle of the woods was really weird.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually makes sense. So the original ending, Tom Savini said they went out right before they shot, and it was originally supposed to be shot in a cave, which
Yep.
was an abandoned mine, and they left string as they went in, and they found this place. They left the string behind, like a rope, so they could find their way out, so they didn't get lost. When they came back the next day, boulders had fallen and covered like large parts of the string, and they realized really quickly that they could not film in this. It was going to be super dangerous, so they had to end up converting this farm over to like what looked like old coal mining. So essentially, these walled ruins were the ruins of what used to be a mine.
Yeah. So, besides the collapsed cave, there was another cave, and it hadn't collapsed, and they were wanting to film in there after the first one collapsed, but it was full of bats. And not only are bats terrible for filming, trying to film without bats fucking getting in the way, but
They
also
have COVID.
they had all the bat shit was on the ground, and that shit'll make you really sick. So, but yeah, this place reminds me a lot of My Bloody Valentine, because they're both kind of, the ends take place in these abandoned mines. It's very similar, which is a fucking phenomenal movie. So Todd then attempts to get to Alfred, but before he can get up there, he is surprised by Cropsy, who lights a flamethrower and starts walking towards him. And the sight of this flame immediately starts to give Todd flashbacks of the night when the prank went wrong. Yes, that's right. It has finally been revealed that Todd was one of the kids that set Cropsy on fire. And like I said before, I have a problem with Todd. Like 5 years ago, like he looked like a kid, and now he looks like a fucking almost 30-year-old man. And I looked it up. Brian Matthews, who plays Todd, was born in 1953, which means in 1980, when this was filmed, he was fucking 27 years old.
Yeah.
So definitely kind of a jump there.
You can definitely tell that this isn't 5 years.
He must have ate a lot of Wheaties in that 5 years.
Yeah. So one interesting thing with this big reveal is you think about when he's sitting around telling the campfire story, and you can tell that he feels bad about the repercussions of him getting kicked out of camp, but he has no remorse for Cropsy.
No.
Like, absolutely no remorse. He talks about how awful he was, how much of a sadist he got off on, like, hurting kids and punishing them. So Cropsy was a bastard, and as good of a person as Todd is, like, you can tell he's a good guy in the movie. He does not give a flying fuck about the fact that Cropsy got burnt the fuck up.
Well, another thing about that is you can tell that because he's telling this as a story to other kids. And if you went through this traumatic event that you feel really bad about, you wouldn't be telling kids this as a campfire story. You would avoid telling that story at all costs. So yeah, he doesn't give a fuck. So Todd eventually snaps out of his flashback scene and remembers that he still has to save Alfred. And right as he sneaks over there, Cropsy shoots the flamethrower at him. Now, he's able to duck and roll out of the way, but more importantly here, we finally get to see Cropsy's melted face, and I think it looks awesome.
It does look awesome as fuck. Tom Savini dislikes it now, looking back on it, but I think it looks great. I don't want to see a actual burn victim. I like to see this scary mongoloid of a killer.
Well, a really good example is like, the Freddy makeup, and then you see the remake where they tried to make him look like a burn victim, and it's uncomfortable.
It is.
I don't want to see that. Give me the exaggerated version.
I feel like it's fucked up to actual burn victims.
Yeah.
And they watch a movie that the horror character looks like them.
Yeah, I think the Cropsy makeup looks fantastic. Tom Savini says he only had 3 days to work on it, so he wasn't really happy with it, but I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And I also love that Cropsy, he's in all black, like black everything, black gloves, black jacket, pants, shoes, all of it. And I'm like, did he sit around and he's like, I'm a villain now. I got to wear all black.
I actually have a theory too that was not obvious to me seeing this movie previously. And then on my last watch, I think Cropsy knew that Todd was one of the kids who set him on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why when he lures him to this building, for the first time in the movie, he ditches the scissors and has a flamethrower in there waiting to set Todd on fire.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to fucking do to you what you did to me. Yeah.
So this whole thing wasn't about just, him out there killing, campers for, because a couple campers set him on fire. I think it was all about Todd.
He
had tracked Todd down, knew where Todd was and was going to corner him and lure him into that building to set him on fire.
Well, yeah, there's also the point, too, where, you can tell Todd cares about the campers, and Cropsy's killing them off to hurt Todd. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, he's doing two things to Todd. He's fucking killing his kids, and then he's going to fucking melt his face.
Bro, you imagine how pissed off Cropsy was when he found out that Todd is now a head camp counselor after getting in trouble for setting a man on fire?
And apparently a whole camp on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cropsy and Todd kind of battle a bit here with the axe and the flamethrower when Todd suddenly trips and falls on his back. But before Cropsy can kill him, Alfred breaks free, pulls the shears from his arm, and stabs Cropsy from behind. He then drops the flamethrower and turns around to look at Alfred, where we then see the shears sticking out the back of his neck. Alfred then screams bloody murder as Cropsy falls to the ground, presumably dead. After this happens, we see Todd and Alfred finally reunite and go to leave the building when suddenly Cropsy comes back to life and grabs Alfred from behind. Because remember what Randy Meeks always says, the killer always comes back for one last scream. Or I think it's one last scare. As Alfred manages to get away, Todd then takes the axe and buries it right into Cropsy's forehead, effectively killing him and pinning him to a wooden support beam. Todd, not wanting to take any more chances. Wait, actually, I think it's Alfred. Yeah.
Sets him on fire.
Alfred takes the flamethrower and sets his body on fire. Todd and Alfred then walk out of the building towards Michelle and the police helicopter. And as we watch Cropsy's body burn, the screen slowly fades into another shot of another camp counselor sitting around a fire with a new group of kids telling them the story of Cropsy and how they never found his body. And that is the end of the burning.
The single best shot of the movie is the axe through Cropsy's head. That was Tom Savini also himself. He did that because the mold in the oven for Cropsy deteriorated super fast. So they had very limited Cropsy molds of the head. And they had essentially one take to get that right. And if you have one take to get right, you use the man himself, Tom Savini.
Gotta send your star quarterback in.
But yeah, I thought the axe through his fucking head, like it splits his head like into. Thought it looked fucking fantastic.
It did look amazing.
I also thought their jump scare was done really good.
Yep.
They did take a page, I feel like, out of Friday the 13th book.
Which Tom Savini, didn't he? I think he says he came up with the whole Jason coming out of the water thing.
There's like 12 people
I know.
that say they came up with that idea. But I think they did a really good job because they play like the peaceful music. They show the police helicopter coming in. They show them getting there with the boat. You know, everybody's there into the story. And then boom, he pops up. And I thought, like, his fucked up burnt face coming from behind them in the silhouette looked awesome.
The important thing here is Dave lived. He survived. Didn't have any encounters with Cropsy. I like Dave. He was the best character.
Yeah.
Todd's also really good too, though.
The important bad thing here is that Alfred lives. Why did you have this creep live? That is my only negative.
He died in the original script, too, man. Just fucking kill him.
It's like my only huge negative on this movie is that he survives. I fucking hate that.
Well, I got headcanon that he dies in a car wreck on the way home from camp. So
you think, like, he set Cropsy on fire and he was like, God, that was almost exhilarating as watching Sally's soapy titties.
Yeah, I hate him. Let's see. I got facts here, but we actually probably covered all of them. I got one that we didn't cover.
I had a lot. I watched like literally all the special features.
So the movie is fairly unique for a slasher movie in the sense that most of the women who are killed didn't have sex prior to their deaths. In fact, they strongly refused to be seduced into having sex. Furthermore, the character who takes on and survives the killer is a man with a violent past, rather than the standard final girl who is usually innocent, helpless, and morally upright. So yeah, it is a camp slasher that covers a lot of the kind of standard things that we see, but we do have a bit of a different ending than we normally get.
You know, I would have definitely rather seen a final girl in that survival spot as opposed to Alfred.
Oh, I agree with that, but I do like Todd being the hero.
Yeah,
I like
yeah, I
that.
agree.
I
I
like
agree
Todd.
with that.
So ratings and kill count. We got a total number of kills of 10. We have the prostitute who is stabbed with the scissors, Karen who had her throat slit with shears, Fish who was stabbed in the chest with shears, Barbara stabbed in the back with shears, Woodstock had his fingers cut off and his throat slit, Eddie who was stabbed in the neck with the shears, Diane who had her forehead cut, Sally, we don't really know, but he probably killed her with the shears. Glazer, who had his throat stabbed with the shears, and Cropsy himself, who was stabbed in the neck and his head was destroyed by the axe and set on fire. So, 10 kills. Favorite kill, and you're up first.
So I gotta go hands down. Cropsy getting axed to the head was fucking way too awesome to pass up on. It's the whole practical effect for that just looked amazing. Now a second's hard because there's a lot of really good kills in
Concur.
this movie. I went with Glazer, with him being impaled through the throat, lifted off the ground, and literally pinned to this fucking tree by the back of the scissors coming out of his neck. Loved that. Maybe kind of skewed because I seen how they shot that and how cool that was, and that they did that in all one scene. And I really wanted to include Woodstock here just because of how awesome his dead body looks, but we don't actually get to see how he got to that point, so I figured it didn't count. So
I went with the raft scene as my favorite. We have so many good effects here.
hey, that's not fair. You
Why?
can't pick six kills
It's in
as
one
your favorite
shot.
kill.
It's in one shot.
No, but we're talking about favorite kill, not favorite group of 6 kills.
It's literally like all of these awesome effects in a
Nope.
span of 30
Nope,
seconds.
I'm challenging that
I'm
one.
counting it. It's too late.
All
It's
right,
already
well,
on
that's all
paper.
your pick. You got to pick and then 5 runner-ups.
Yeah, I'm going raft scene. And then my second was Cropsy's axe to the head.
You just picked over half the kills in the movie.
That's fine.
That's okay.
There's no rules established.
Yeah, well, we're gonna call it best kills now.
No, you can do that. I mean, if you get 6 kills in the span of 30 seconds, you just count the whole scene. I don't care.
My favorite was all of them. I thought they were all great. That's gonna be now my answer from now on. My runner-up was the rest of the kills.
All right, so film rating.
So I gave this movie a 3.9. Thought this was a awesome cult 80s slasher, obviously greatly elevated by Tom Savini. I thought the feel and tone perfectly 80s camp slasher. I really liked that this was based off a real known urban legend. I did not know that prior until I started getting into the special features, that was a legitimate thing. Really liked the chemistry of the campers. That felt really genuine. Obviously, the shining light of this movie is the special effects. All the kills were great. Really, really liked the look of Cropsy. Seeing that would have absolutely scared the shit out of me. I would say that this is a cult classic must-see.
What'd you do, 3.9?
3.9. I was close to a 4.
I did a 3.8, and I would have gave it a 4, but there was 2 things.
Alfred Levin. I would have gave it a 4.2.
My problem was there was a bit of a big space, to me at least, between the prostitute kill and the Karen kill. They do stack up more in the back half of the movie, but we do get a big chunk where we don't get any kills. I'm like, damn. They almost blue ball you too, because they do a lot of POV of him creeping around the cabin, all this shit, but we don't get any kills.
Yeah, he creeps up on Todd. He
And
creeps up on Woodstock and Tiger in the very beginning. So we get a lot of almost kills.
Yeah.
But the actual kills for the camp didn't start until probably halfway through the movie.
Yeah, so I deducted a point for that. And then this movie is missing a major component that camp slashers have to have.
Final girl.
No, it didn't have any weed. Where was the guy smoking weed?
So no weed, but I do have a theory on that. I know you had mentioned the whole vitamin E thing. So when he goes back and he's looking, and he's looking at this pill bottle, and then Todd comes in and gets him, and he takes him back. And so there's two things that came to my mind. Either he has like a vitamin E deficiency, and but he asks everybody like, who has my vitamin E, which would be weird.
Mm-hmm.
When he sits down, if you watch this scene closely, when Todd sits him down and he says to the other two, like, don't ever fucking pull a
Yeah,
prank
yeah.
like that again. He looks at like Dave, and they give them this look, and he shakes his head no real quick. I think he was going back for some drugs.
Oh, you think he's going to get the weed?
I think not the weed, but I think like it was because he looked in that pill. It could have been weed in the pill bottle, but it was like a pill that they were gonna take. What was it that was super famous back then?
Quaaludes?
Quaaludes, man. Maybe it was
Could've
some
been.
like Quaaludes or
Dave
something he
sold
was
him
looking
some
for.
Quaaludes, man.
Yeah.
Woodstock looks like he'd smoke weed, though, and they should have had him smoke weed in this movie.
Yeah.
You would have had boobs, you would have had sex, you would have had drugs, and you would have had a camp and a fucking killer, man. You'd have had it all.
Yeah.
Yep, so I deducted a point from that, 3.8 for me. All right, so that is our thoughts on The Burning. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website and check out the socials. Tell a friend, a family member, or your favorite camp counselor about the show. And we hope to see you next time. You got any last words?
From the great Dave himself, the best quote of the movie. Thank God for her mother and father.
Don't look, he'll see you. Don't breathe, he'll hear you. Don't move, you're dead.